Hello, my name's Elizabeth, and I'm 24 years old. 3 years ago, I married the most beautiful person I have ever met, Abraham. He's such a kind and compassionate goofball who makes me feel amazing every day. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for his mother, Natasha, aka my mother-in-law. She, for some reason, has always had it out for me since day one, and I get it. That's her precious baby boy, and she doesn't want to see him get hurt. She's just interested in protecting his best interests, but I genuinely do believe that she takes things overboard sometimes. She's the type of person who does seemingly small and innocently naive injustices to people. But, in reality, she deliberately pushes your buttons and gets on your nerves to make you seem like you're the crazy one. I know we all know someone like that in our lives. Unfortunately, I have to deal with this person because she's my mother-in-law. Anyhow, I was raised differently. I'm the type of person who calls people out on their nonsense, and I tend not to hold back. I think this is why Abraham fell in love with my personality, because he's more of a quiet, soft-spoken person, and just like the saying goes, opposites do indeed attract. I studied a bit of psychology, so believe me when I say that I know that Natasha, my mother-in-law, has bad intentions. I think both of our domineering personalities clash, which is probably why she said this the first time I met her. Elizabeth, don't you think it's time to stop eating so much? The whole table at the restaurant sucked in the air, daring not to speak. I was completely mortified, and I'm sure my pale complexion was a great indicator of how embarrassed and flushed I was. It was me, Abraham, who was my boyfriend at the time, Jason, my father-in-law, and Natasha at the table. Jason was too stunned to speak, and he bowed his head as if he was sharing my embarrassment. Abraham was also feeling embarrassed, but he was also angry at his mother for saying that. He aptly berated her. Really, Mom? That is such an awful thing to say. She can eat as much as she wants to. Oh, no, sweetie. I didn't mean any harm. I just wanted to look out for you, you know? I've noticed that you've been gaining a lot of weight. Abraham has been showing me your photos from when you were younger, and you looked so much better than now. But I don't mean to be offensive, sweetheart. I'm just trying to give you some advice. I tried my best to remain calm as I didn't want to cause a scene. But my embarrassment quickly started to turn into irritation. Nonetheless, because this was my first time meeting the family, and I wanted to make a lasting impression because I absolutely adored Abraham, for the first time in a long time I held my tongue. I just smiled at her politely and thanked her for the unsolicited advice. Situations like that grew in frequency and strength as we got to know each other more. I genuinely believed that the taunting would stop at some point after she had determined that I was good for her son. But it only appeared to be getting worse. I was beginning to get along fine with my father-in-law, Jason, who is the sweetest man on earth. I see where Abraham gets it from. As much as I was growing closer and closer to everyone else in Abraham's family, Natasha appeared to be the only one who disliked me, and for no apparent reason as well. I even got introduced to Jack, who was Abraham's childhood friend. They grew up together. Kyla, Natasha practically considered him as a second son. Even though Abraham's whole heart was open to me, and it appeared as though his family accepted me with open arms, even his extended family, as well as Jack. It was just Natasha who had an issue with me. I'm so grateful for the love and support I managed to identify from the vast and overwhelming majority of Abraham's family. I received this love and support up until my wedding day, where my mother-in-law, of course, tried to do something conniving to get me to look bad on my special day. She made it a point to be as bothersome and as ridiculous as she could be. Honestly, she was acting like a bridezilla. No, her hair is supposed to be in an updo, just like how I did on my wedding day. I appreciate the help, Natasha, but I want my hair to look like this. I don't think so. You look so ugly. The bridal party gasped, but unfortunately, I was used to this, so it wasn't surprising. She quickly tried to rectify her mistake. Oh no, darling, no, I just mean that you can look so much better than you do now. And I would just like to say that I see a lot of myself in Elizabeth. She is such a bright young woman, and even though I look much better than she did at her age, I would like to say that she is beautiful in her way. Although my father-in-law managed to get my mother-in-law to stop her ruthless antics on the day, the pain and bitterness I felt remained. This was not in my nature to remain silent and unresponsive. I was losing my firecracker energy, this woman was slowly draining me, and it had to be put to an end. Fast forward 3 years to where the events of today's story take place. We were all sitting at the dining table of Abraham's childhood home, where his parents still live, on a Sunday night. My mother-in-law had ever so graciously invited us over, including Jack, meaning that it must have been something important she wanted to tell us all. Although I had my suspicions about her randomly making this dinner plan, which later on were affirmed, it was a pleasant surprise. At some point, the ball dropped, and this is the beginning of what turned out to be a very messy series of events. My mother-in-law started to garner everyone's attention as she had an important announcement to make. She pulled out a paper and started reading it. Attention, everyone. I have an announcement to make. As you all know, my birthday's coming up, and so I wanted to let you know what I've been planning for the very special day. I've decided that we're going to take a trip to Hawaii. The paper was a confirmation of the Hawaii trip. That sounds fantastic. What? That's amazing, Elizabeth. I've always wanted to go to Hawaii. Oh my goodness, this is great news. I'm so excited, I don't even know what to say. Thanks so much, Ma. Oh, actually, you're not coming. Honey, what are you talking about? This wasn't part of the plan. I made some last-minute arrangements and managed to cancel her ticket before they gave us extra charges. Oh, so my ticket was already bought, she just went ahead and canceled it? Why does this woman hate me so much? Mom, what are you talking about? Jack and I seemed to be the only ones silent in this whole situation, as a whole flurry of harsh words was exchanged back and forth. Eventually, after some poking and prodding for a decent enough excuse, Natasha finally stated, okay, fine. I'll tell you the reason why I thought it best that Elizabeth sits this family event out. As you all know, I'm getting a little bit older, and I've decided that I want the remaining years of my life to be centered on being around the people I care most about. Unfortunately, Elizabeth just doesn't belong on that list. Wow, Mom, really? What is wrong with you? Nothing is wrong with me. Don't you dare disrespect me. I'm just saying that, well, you know, Elizabeth can't be considered part of our family since she's not related by blood. Well, by that logic, then Jack shouldn't be able to go either, right? Since he isn't technically family, as you're stating. But we all know that's preposterous, and he is part of the family. And ever since Abraham and Elizabeth got married, that means she is part of the family. Well, obviously, with Jack, it's different, you know that. He's just so precious, and he's our sweet baby angel. He's always been here. But Elizabeth hasn't, so that's why I'm just not comfortable with her coming on the trip. And it's my birthday, so I get to decide whatever we want. Come on, Elizabeth, we're leaving at once. No, the way that I firmly said no commanded all of the attention in the room, including my antagonist who was trying to stifle a smile this entire time. But at that moment, she wiped it off her face. Natasha, you've made it clear since the beginning that you do not like me, and every day for the past 3 years, I have endured your insufferableness. You think we all don't see how you act? You think that we all don't notice that you're a narcissist, little girl? You better watch the way you speak to me. You are in my house. And not for long, I'm not. I'm just about to leave, actually. But not before I say this. I turned to my loving husband, who was looking at his mother with angry eyes. Babe, I love you with my whole heart, and I have tried to endure this for such a long time. But I see now that your mother will never accept me into this family, no matter how hard I try and no matter how many times I bite my tongue. You should go on this trip, you can't miss it. As much as your mother is crazy, she's still your mother, and you love her, and she loves you. So you have to go. Don't worry about me, I'll be fine. I then turned to my mother-in-law, whose mouth was agape because of what I just said. And as for you, unfortunately for you, I am in love with your son, and I am not going anywhere. You might think that you can push me away, but I will always be here. Even when you go to Hawaii, you will always be thinking about me because if I'm being honest, I think you're obsessed with me. How dare you? I should slap you right now. I'm not finished. You are obsessed with me. You're obsessed with tearing me down, and I cannot even imagine why, when all I've done is shown you kindness and patience, even when you didn't deserve it. But enough is enough. You don't want me to go to Hawaii with you? Fine. You don't think I'm part of the family? Fine, but I will always be here. As long as I breathe, I will always be here for Abraham, Jason, and even Jack. But never for you. At that moment, I realized that I finally shut her up. She left her mouth open as if she was searching for something to say, anything to say, but her mind wouldn't let her. Finally, I managed to keep her quiet. I said goodbye to the rest of the family members, kissed my husband on the cheek, and began to walk out. Let me drive you home at least. I can't let you take a cab. Please don't worry about me, babe. I love you, and thank you so much for loving me. But I'll be fine. You have a trip to discuss. Okay, if you say you'll be fine, and I'll believe you. Oh, don't forget your purse, right? My purse? I left it in the kitchen. Once I arrived, at some point, though Natasha went into the kitchen, I think to catch her breath after the whole situation. After being berated like that, I too would have done something similar. What do you want? Don't worry about me, sweetheart. I'm just here to collect my things. Well, make it quick. I want you out of my house. I can't believe you said those things to me. With that, she quickly stormed out. She was filled with so much anger that she didn't even want to see me out the door. At that moment, I scoffed at her ridiculousness and reached for my purse when I noticed a piece of paper next to it. My eyes glanced over it and noticed that it was Natasha's handwriting. I believed at the time that it must have been a piece of paper detailing the itinerary for the trip, because I was feeling slightly bitter about not going. I wanted to take a peek and see just how much fun I'd be missing out on. I grabbed it and began to read the paper. Dearest Jack, you know that you have always been like a son to me, and you know that I love you dearly. Oh, so this is a letter to Jack, a bit strange, but I guess it's thoughtful. For some reason, my curious eyes began to read further. And the love and care you have shown for me throughout the years will never be forgotten. I hate to admit it, but even when it comes to my son Abraham, I feel as though the love we once shared is no longer there. Wait, what is she saying? She loves Jack more than she loves Abraham? That simply couldn't be. I continued to read the paper, and with each new line, I got more astonished at what I was reading. I simply couldn't believe it. There was a lot to unpack, and even though it wasn't my place to read that letter, I'm really glad that I did. After reading the entirety of the letter, I began to pace in the kitchen, wondering what to do. And then it hit me. All of the people who needed to know about this letter's existence were all sitting in that room. If ever there was a time to act, it was now. I reread the letter one more time just to make sure that I wasn't crazy and imagining things. And just as I thought, yep, it was the same thing I read the first time. I waltzed out into the dining room to meet only 3 pairs of eyes looking back at me. Elizabeth, I am so sorry for what my wife is trying to put you through. Don't worry one bit. You will come with us to Hawaii. As long as I'm around, she's just in a funk right now. But don't worry, I'll convince her to change her mind. I don't know what's gotten into her recently, but don't worry, I will change her mind. As I said, Jason, please don't worry about me. As I said, I'm fine, more than fine, because I have found some interesting news that I need to share with everyone, and I especially need to share it with Abraham. Abraham and Jack's ears perked up. I saw the flash of worry that ran across Abraham's face. Perhaps he thought that this was too much for me to handle and that I wanted to ask for a divorce. Oftentimes when I would complain about his mother to him, he'd agree with me and wonder how I managed to keep up with her nonsense for so long. I'd always tell him that it was because I loved him way too much to let him go and that I'd go to hell and back for him. I noticed that the Wicked Witch of the West wasn't around, so I asked, "Where is Natasha?" She needs to be here for this too. Oh, I mentioned earlier she appears to be in a bit of a funk after you shouted at her. She said she got a mild headache and wanted to nurse it with a nap upstairs. She won't be down for a while, you know how she gets about her beauty sleep. I was all too familiar with Natasha's awkward and unnecessary routines and regimes that would often inconvenience others. I held back in irritation. This is just really important, she has to be here. It's okay, Elizabeth. You can tell us, and we'll inform her when she wakes up. I hesitated, considering the information that I knew. I wanted to see the redness on her face from embarrassment. I think you should just go ahead and tell us, sweetie. It's okay, and you know Abraham has anxiety, it would be bad to keep him waiting. That was true, Abraham's anxiety got really bad at times, and I could see him begin to fidget from the anticipation. Okay, fine. I'll show you guys what I found when I was in the kitchen, collecting my purse and getting ready to leave. I found something interesting that I think you all need to know about. I pulled out the paper I found and began to read it. It reads, "Dearest Jack, you know that you have always been like a son to me, and you know that I love you dearly, and the love and care you have shown for me throughout the years will never be forgotten. I hate to admit it, but even when it comes to my son Abraham, I feel as though the love we once shared is no longer there." What is she saying? What is this? I continued reading. "Abraham, I just don't see eye to eye like we used to, and honestly, I think it's because of Elizabeth. Ever since he married that girl, he no longer has time for me. He doesn't love me, and therefore, I don't think I love him. I love you, and you are my son." With that being said, I finally looked up from reading the letter, and I was met with a flurry of mixed emotions. Jason looked like he was going to cry, Jack looked stunned, but Abraham looked like he was going to murder someone. I can't believe she said all those things. Is she being serious right now? So the reason why she's doing all of this is because of Elizabeth? She hates Elizabeth so much that she'd not include me in her will just to spite me and Elizabeth. She's officially lost her mind, you guys. I don't even know what to say. This has gone far enough. I've had it with this woman and her toxic behavior. What are we going to do? At that moment, I had an idea. 1 week had gone by, and it was time for the designated Hawaii trip. Natasha woke up and found a letter from her husband on her bedside table. It read, "Good morning, gorgeous. We decided to let you get some more beauty rest. Don't worry, your bags have all been packed. Just find us at the airport." Natasha then got ready and headed to the airport, looking around frantically for the people with whom she was meant to go on this birthday trip. She tried calling them, but they all wouldn't answer. She assumed that they were already on the plane and therefore couldn't answer her call. She rushed frantically and boarded her flight, hoping to just meet them once they landed in Hawaii. She endured the 12-hour flight, and once she landed, she video called Jason. "Hello, Jason. Where the hell are you guys? I woke up late and saw your note, which was a cute idea if I hadn't woken up so late. I got to the airport and tried calling you guys, but none of you were responding. I just assumed that you already boarded, but it doesn't matter now, because now we're in Hawaii. How amazing. Tell me where you are so we can meet up, and let the festivities begin." "That won't be happening, Natasha." "Well, what do you mean? Tell me where you are." "I'm at home." "You heard me, I'm at home. We're all at home. Say hi, everyone." Jason panned out his phone to show that everyone, himself, Jack, Abraham, and me, were all in his house, sitting at the same dining table where we all heard the tragic news from a week before. "What do you mean? Why are you at home?" "You see, Natasha, Elizabeth brought some interesting information to our attention a week ago, and ever since then, we decided that we'd much rather spend our time in boring old Florida with her than anywhere else with you." Natasha gasped. "You think we wouldn't find out?" "Find out what, my baby? Oh, don't you baby me. You were really gonna cut me out of the will, Mom?" I. Who? How did you even find out about that? Oh, that wretched girl that you hate so much, Elizabeth, found your stupid letter in the kitchen. I don't know what you're talking about, Natasha. Lying right now is only adding more nails to the coffin. Jack, tell them. You've got to believe me, I did nothing of this sort. We all read the letter, Natasha. The gig is up. But I didn't do anything. Elizabeth is making everything up. Oh, am I? You are so pathetic, it actually makes me sick. We all know what you said and what you tried to do. Thank God I was nosy enough to read the whole thing. Abraham, Jason, please, no, Natasha, enough is enough. You're done. You don't get to say anything else. You messed up big time, your hatred has caused you to be blind. Now you have to suffer the consequences of being alone on your birthday because of what you've done. I hope you can use this time in Hawaii to reflect on your actions. But I'll be alone. It won't be fun. Maybe people would like to hang out with you more if you weren't such a raging witch. Have fun. And with that, Jason hung up the phone. We all let out a sigh of relief. When I was the first person to start laughing, eventually Abraham joined in, and before we knew it, we were all bursting with laughter and cackling at the dining table, just laughing at how crazy the situation was. The look on her face once she realized the gig was up was hilarious. Her face turned pale, all the blood drained from her face. I could tell that that was the first time in a long time that she felt embarrassed. Natasha had to spend her vacation alone, often calling Jason to see if he, at least, would come and join her because canceling the reservations she made would be expensive. But every time he kept denying it, he said that when she comes back, they were going to have to implement some ground rules that were to be followed if she still wanted to be married to him. Natasha began to be very apologetic and frantic, a complete 180 from what she normally acted like, which was honestly surprising. Abraham also mentioned that if Natasha still wanted to be in his life, she had to drastically change her attitude. Otherwise, he was ready to walk out of her life forever. Their relationship is still rocky, and Abraham said that if Natasha ever disrespected him ever again, even if it's the smallest snide remark she could make, he would cut her off completely, the same way that she was planning on cutting him off. As for Jack, he thought it best to stop being so nice to Natasha, as it was clearly enabling her toxic behavior. So not only did Natasha end up spending a miserable time in a beautiful place, but she also risked losing the three most important people in her life. She now has very rocky relationships with all of them, and she has to change to be better. As for me, I messaged her and told her that I need time to see if I'm going to forgive her for all of her injustices. And she was apologizing and begging for me to talk some sense into the men in her life. I obviously refused, stating that this is the bed she made for herself, and now she has to lay in it. And even to this day, Natasha is still trying to mend the very broken relationships that she caused. I just hope that she learned her lesson. In conclusion, the tumultuous relationship between Elizabeth and her mother-in-law, Natasha, reached a breaking point when Natasha's manipulative actions were exposed. The attempted betrayal and subsequent consequences led to strained relationships and self-reflection for everyone involved. While Elizabeth's resilience prevailed, Natasha faced the repercussions of her toxic behavior, highlighting the importance of honesty and respect within family dynamics. The experience served as a catalyst for change, leaving a lasting impact on the characters' lives and underscoring the significance of understanding, forgiveness, and personal growth.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, is something wrong?" Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, what's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. "Probably Sam." Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike, what have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.